In today's video, we will be looking at the Edexcel Maths Paper 1 from the Foundation tier, which is a non-calculator paper. Number 1. Write 38% as a decimal. So if we want to write 38% as a decimal, we know that as a fraction, this is the same as 38 over 100, which is 38 hundredths. So if we want to write that as a decimal, we will write it as 0.38. Number 2, what fraction of this shape is shaded? So as we can see, we have 1, 2, and 3 parts which are shaded. So we will write 3 as our numerator. And we can put this over the total amount of parts in this shape, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So the fraction of the shape that is shaded is 3 over 10. Number 3. Here's a list of numbers: 1.6, 1.4, 2.1, 0.5, 1.3. From the list, write down the smallest number. To find the smallest number, we first have to look at the first digit of all numbers. So here we've got 1, 1, 2, 0, and 1. Out of all of these, we can see that the smallest number is 0. Therefore, the smallest number is going to be 0.5. Number 4, work out -9 plus 5. And -9 plus 5 gives us -4. So all of these questions, number 1 to 4, were all worth 1 mark each. Number 5, solve p minus 2 is equal to 3. So to solve for p, we would first have to make p the subject, meaning we would have to add 2 on both sides, which means p is equal to 3 plus 2, and p is therefore equal to 5. And we would get 1 mark for this question. Number 6, Freddie adds labels to this diagram of a circle. Explain why one of the labels is wrong. So if we look at the diagram, we can see that the center is labeled correctly. The circumference is labeled correctly. However, the diameter is not labeled correctly because what that is pointing to is actually the radius. We can therefore say that the diameter label should actually be labeled radius. And this was also a 1 mark question. Write down 3 different factors of 20. So to find the factors of 20, we can start with 1, and 1 times 20 gives us 20. 2 is divisible by 20, and 2 times 10 gives us 20. 3 is not divisible, but 4 times 5 gives us 20. So we could pick any of these 3 different factors. So I'd pick 1, 4, and 10. And this was a 2 mark question, so we would get a full 2 marks for picking any 3 correct factors. Number 8, work out the size of the angle marked X. So we can see that these are angles around a point, and we know angles around a point add up to 360 degrees. So to find X, we would take away 50 from 360, and that would give us 310 degrees. A student says that an angle of 50 degrees is an obtuse angle. The student is wrong. Part B, explain why. So for this question, we can say that obtuse angles are greater than 180 degrees. However, 50 degrees is less than 180, and therefore it is an acute angle. So for part A, we would first get a mark for knowing that angles around a point add up to 360, and the second mark for getting a correct answer of 310 degrees. And for part B, we would get 1 mark for a correct explanation of why the student was wrong. Number 9, part A, write down the coordinates of point B. So we can first write the x coordinate of B, which is 5, and then we can write the y coordinate, which is 2. So the coordinates of point B are 5, 2. Part B, plot the point with coordinates 4, -2. So we can look for 4 in the x-axis and -2 in the y-axis, and that would be this point here, and we can now call it point C. Part C, write down the coordinates of the midpoint of AB. So to find the midpoint of AB, we can see that the x-coordinate of A starts at -3 and goes all the way up to B, whose x-coordinate is 5. We can see that that is a total of 8 boxes or 8 units in the x-axis, and the midpoint or half of 8 is 4. So if we count 4 boxes from either side, from -3 if we count 4, we get to 1. And if we look at where the x-coordinate of 1 is on AB, we can see that it is there, which is correct because in the y-axis, from A to B, we have moved 2 units, and if we halve 2, we get 1. So the coordinate of the midpoint of B would therefore be 1 for the x-coordinate and 3 for the y-coordinate. Part D. Draw the line with equation y is equal to -4. So we first need to identify where -4 is on the y-axis, and we can see it's there. So we therefore just have to draw a straight line at that point, and we can label it y is equal to -4. So for part A, we would get 1 mark for writing down the correct coordinates. For part B, we would get a mark for plotting point C. For part C, we would get 1 mark again for the correct midpoint coordinates. And for part D, we would get 1 mark for drawing the line y is equal to -4. Number 10. Max sees this special offer in a shop. Buy 1 large plate and get 1 small plate for half the normal price. The normal price of a large plate is £2. The normal price of a small plate is 80p. Max wants to buy 6 large plates and 6 small plates using this offer. He has £15. Has Max got enough money? You must show how you get your answer. We know that the normal price of 1 large plate is £2, and we know that the normal price of a small plate is 80p. However, if Max uses this offer, he will get the small plate for half of the price, which is a half of 80p, and a half of 80 is 40. This would be the price if he used this offer to buy 1 large plate and 1 small plate. However, Max wants to buy 6 large plates. So if 1 large plate is £2, 6 plates will be 2 times 6, which is equal to £12. Similarly, using this offer, 1 small plate is 40p, but if Max uses this offer to buy 6 small plates, this will be 40 times 6. 4 times 6 is 24, and we can just add the 0 to make it 240p, which is the same as £2.40. So the total amount of money that Max will be spending on these plates is going to be 12 plus £2.40. 12 plus 2 is 14, so he will be spending £14.40. And the question is asking us if Max has got enough money. So based on our calculations, we can say that yes, he has got enough money. So for this question, we would first get 1 mark for finding the correct half price, which is 40p for 1 small plate. We will then get a 2nd mark for finding the cost of 6 large plates, a 3rd mark for getting the cost of 6 small plates, and the final mark for getting the total cost and showing that he has got enough money. Number 11. A total of 700 tickets were on sale for a football match. 452 of the tickets were sold. Part A, how many tickets were not sold? So to find out how many tickets were not sold, we can just do 700 take away the tickets that were sold, which is 452. We cannot do 0 take away 2, so we would have to exchange from the 7 and make this number 10. We would then exchange from here, make this 9, and this would now become 10. So 10 take away 2 is 8, 9 take away 5 would be 4, and 6 take away 4 would be 2. So our final answer will be 248. And this was a 2-mark question, so we would get 1 mark for the correct method and a second mark for the correct answer. The next part says, for a different football match, 297 tickets were sold for £9.50 each. 399 tickets were sold for £19.50 each. Work out an estimate for the total amount of money paid for these tickets. You must show all your working. Because this question is asking for an estimate, that means we would round the numbers that we have been given. The first piece of information says 297 tickets, so we will round that to the nearest 100 and make it 300. And that was sold for £9.50. So if we round £9.50 to the nearest whole number, that would give us 10. 300 times 10 would give us 3,000. The second set of tickets that was sold was 399 tickets. So if we round that to the nearest 100, that becomes 400. And these were sold for £19.50. And if we round that to the nearest whole number, that becomes 20. 400 times 20 gives us 8,000. And because we are looking for the estimate of the total amount, we would now add 3,000 and 8,000 to give us 11,000. So £11,000 is our estimate for the total money paid for these tickets. This was a 3-mark question, so we would get the first mark for correctly estimating the first set of tickets, the second mark for estimating the second set of tickets, and a third mark for getting a correct final answer of 11,000. Part C says, is your answer to Part B an underestimate or overestimate? Give a reason for your answer. So for this question, we would say that our answer is an overestimate, and the reason is because all the numbers that we rounded were rounded up. And for Part C, we would get 1 mark for this correct answer. Number 12. Here are 6 numbers: 13, 5, 4, 9, 3, 8. Work out the mean. So to find the mean, we first need to add all the numbers that have been given to us, and then divide them by the total number of numbers that we have. So we have 6 numbers here given, so we will be dividing this by 6. So if we add this up, 13 plus 5 is 18, 18 plus 4 is 22, 22 plus 9 gives us 31, 31 plus 3 gives us 34, and 34 plus 8 gives us 42, and 42 divided by 6 gives us 7. So our mean is 7. We would get 1 mark here for the correct method for finding mean, and the second mark for the correct final answer of 7. Number 13, Part A, simplify 15a over 3. So in order to simplify this, we can just divide the numerator and denominator by the highest common factor, which is 3. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 15 divided by 3 gives us 5. So this just gives us a final answer of 5a. And this would be worth 1 mark. Part B, simplify 19 plus 5b plus 4c minus 7b plus c. So 19 does not have any like terms because 19 is the only number term that we have. So we can just write 19 as it is. The b terms that we have are 5b and minus 7b. So 5b minus 7b gives us minus 2b. And the c terms that we have are 4c plus c. 4c plus c gives us 5c, so we can write this as plus 5c. So our final answer is going to be 19 minus 2b plus 5c. So for this question, we would get 2 marks for correctly collecting all the like terms and getting a correct final answer. Part C, factorize 8d minus 6. So in order to factorize this, we would first factor out the highest common factor of 8 and 6, which is 2. And then we open the bracket and look at what we need to do to 2 in order to make it 8d. And in order to make it 8d, we would have to multiply it by 4d. We then need to check what we need to do to 2 in order to make it minus 6. And in order to make that minus 6, we would have to multiply that by minus 3. So our factorized answer for this question is 2 brackets 4d minus 3, and this is worth 1 mark. Number 14. Last week, 73% of the tickets sold at a cinema were adult tickets. What percentage of the tickets sold were not adult tickets? So we know that the total percentage would be 100%. So in order to find how many tickets were not sold, we would do 100 take away 73, and that would give us 27%. And this question would be worth 1 mark. The next part says, some people watched a film at the cinema. Number of adults to number of children is equal to 2 to 5. What fraction of these people were adults? So in order to find the fraction, we would first have to add this ratio, which is 2 plus 5, and that means the total number of people have been divided into 7 total parts. Out of these 7 parts, the number of adults were 2, so as a fraction, the fraction of adults can be written as 2 over the total parts, which is 7, and this is also worth 1 mark. The next part says, on Friday, 500 people watched a film at the cinema. 70% of these people were children. On Saturday, 720 people watched the film at the cinema. 5/8 of these people were children. Kasim thinks more children watched the film on Friday than on Saturday. Part C, is Kasim correct? You must show how you get your answer. So in order to get our answer for this question, we would need to work out how many children watched the film on each day. So for Friday, we know that 70% of these people were children. So to do that, we will do 70% of 500. And we can write this as 70 over 100 times 500 in order to work it out. We can first simplify these by cancelling the zeros in the numerator and denominator, which are common. And that would now leave us with 70 times 5, which gives us 350. So on Friday, 350 children watched the film. For Saturday, we know that 5/8 of the people were children. So to work out the number of children, we can do 5/8 of 720. And to work this out, we would do 720 divided by 8. 72 divided by 8 is 9. So 720 divided by 8 would be 90. And then we would multiply 90 by 5. 9 times 5 is 45. So 90 times 5 would be 450. So as we can see, more children watched this on Saturday, which is 450 children, compared to the children on Friday, which was 350. So to answer the question, is Kasim correct? We can say no, he is not correct, and we have shown our working to support the answer. So for this question, we would get 1 mark for working out the correct number of children who watched it on Friday, the second mark for the correct number of children who watched it on Saturday, and a third mark for a correct answer of no. Number 15. Work out 6 over 7 times 5 over 12. Give your answer as a fraction in its simplest form. In order to multiply a fraction, we would multiply the numerators by each other and the denominators by each other. And what we can do is we can see if we can simplify any of the numerators with any of the denominators. And as we can see, 6 and 12 have a highest common factor of 6. So we can do 6 divided by 6, which is 1, and 12 divided by 6 gives us 2. So we can now rewrite this as 1 times 5 over 7 times 2. And 1 times 5 is 5, and 7 times 2 is 14. And this fraction cannot be simplified anymore, so our final answer for this question is 5 over 14. This was a 2-mark question, and the first mark would be given for correctly multiplying and simplifying the fraction, and the second mark for getting a correct final answer of 5 over 14. Number 16. Here's the list of ingredients for making 20 biscuits, and we've been given all the ingredients that's needed. Harry wants to make 60 biscuits. How much flour does Harry need? So because he wants to make 60 biscuits and the question is asking how much flour he needs, we first need to check what the recipe caters for. The recipe makes 20 biscuits, and for 20 biscuits, we need 250 grams of flour. So in order to make 60 biscuits, we need to check what we have done to the recipe. So as we can see, we are now making 3 times more the amount, which means that each ingredient in the recipe would have to be multiplied by 3, including the flour. We are therefore going to do 250 times 3, and 25 times 3 is 75. Therefore, 250 times 3 would be 750 grams. So our final answer for this question is 750. This was a 2-mark question, and we would get the first mark for recognizing that we have to multiply the ingredients by 3, and the second mark for getting a correct final answer of 750 grams. Number 17. There are 200 counters in a bag. 38 counters are red, 52 counters are blue. The rest of the counters are yellow or green. There are the same number of yellow counters as green counters. What percentage of the counters in a bag are yellow? So in order to find that, we can first add 38 and 52, which gives us 90. So we know that the red and blue all together are 90. So in order to find how many green and yellow we've got, we would do 200, take away the 90, and that would leave us with the green and yellow counters. So 0 take away 0 is 0. We would then have to borrow from the 2. 10 take away 9 is 1. And now we have the total number of green and yellow counters, which is 110. The question says that there are the same number of yellow counters as green counters. So to find how many green counters we have and how many yellow counters we have, we would now have to divide 110 by 2. 1 divided by 2 is 0, 11 divided by 2 is 5, with the remainder of 1, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. This means that there are 55 green counters and 55 yellow counters. Because the question is saying what percentage of the counters in the bag are yellow, we now know that 55 of the counters are yellow out of a total of 200 counters. So we've now written this as a fraction, and in order to make it a percentage, we would just have to multiply by 100. So we can simplify this by cancelling the common zeros, and this would now be 55 times 1, which is 55, over 2. And we can simplify this by dividing it again, so 55 divided by 2. 5 divided by 2 gives us 2 with a remainder of 1. 15 divided by 2 gives us 7, also with a remainder of 1. And we have to remember that after all whole numbers, we have a decimal and zeros, so we can put the remainder there. And 10 divided by 2 is 5. So this has now given us the answer for the percentage of counters which are yellow, and that is 27.5%. This was a 4-mark question. We would first get 1 mark for correctly finding out the number of yellow and green counters. We would get a 2nd mark for finding the number of yellow counters, a 3rd mark for the correct method of changing this into a percentage, and a final mark for getting a correct final answer of 27.5. Number 18. Naomi has B bags of apples and C crates of apples. There are 5 apples in each bag. There are 28 apples in each crate. Naomi has a total of T apples. Write a formula for T in terms of B and C. So using the first piece of information about the bags, if one bag has 5 apples, that means to find out how many apples we would have in B number of bags, we would have to multiply the number of apples, 5, by the number of bags, which in this case is B. So here we would have 5B apples. The next piece of information is about the crates. So if one crate has 28 apples, to find out how many apples are in C crate, we would have to multiply 28 by the number of crates, which is C. The question is asking us to find the total number of apples. So in order to find the total, we would have to add these up. So the total T would therefore be equal to 5B plus 28C. This was a 3-mark question, so we would get the first mark for correctly finding the expression of 5B and 28C. We would get a 2nd mark for knowing that we need to add them to get a total, and we would get a 3rd mark for getting a correct final answer of T is equal to 5B plus 28. Number 19. Here are the first 5 terms of an arithmetic sequence. minus 5, 3, 11, 19, 27. Find an expression in terms of n for the nth term of this sequence. So because this is an arithmetic sequence, we need to see what has been added or taken away in order to make minus 5 into 3, and we can see that we have added 8. And this rule of adding 8 continues for all of the terms in this sequence. Therefore, for our nth term, we are going to put 8n. If we then look at the 8 times table, we need to check what we have done to 8 in order to make it minus 5. And to do that, we would have had to minus 13. If we write the 8 times table, we can see that the second term would be 16, and the second term of the sequence is 3. So in order to make 16 into 3, we would also have to minus 13. Therefore, the minus 13 works for all of the terms in this sequence, and therefore our nth term for this sequence is 8n minus 13. This was a 2-mark question, and we would get full 2 marks for getting both the numbers 8 and minus 13 correct in this nth term formula. Number 20. Work out 8.46 divided by 0.15. We're first going to put this into our division, and the first number always goes on the inside and the second number goes on the outside. We always need to make sure that the number on the outside is a whole number. So in order to make 0.15 into a whole number, we are going to multiply it by 100, which means we also have to multiply the inside number 8.46 by 100. This now gives us 15 on the outside and 846 on the inside, which means we are going to be looking at the 15 times table. Whenever we are looking at the times table of a 2-digit number, we can work this times table out by partitioning the number. So this can be partitioned into 10 and 5, which means we're first looking at the 10 times table, so we could quickly write that down. And the 5 times tables would be 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and 35. To get the 15 times table, what we then need to do is just add both of these. So the first one would give us 15. We would then have 30, 45, 40 plus 20 is 60, and 50 plus 25 is 75, 60 plus 30 is 90, and 70 plus 35 is 105. So now we would need to do 8 divided by 15. 8 is not in the 15 times table, so we put a 0 and carry the 8. 84 divided by 15, we would use 75, which is there 5 times, so we put 5. And to get the remainder, we would just do 84 take away 75, and that gives us 9. So we put the 9 by the 6, which gives us 96. And 96 divided by 15, we would use the 90, which appears 6 times. We have to remember that there's a decimal after a whole number and zeros. So if we do 96 take away 90, that gives us a remainder of 6. So if we put the 6 there, that now becomes 60. And 60 appears in the 15 times table 4 times. So our final answer is going to be 56.4. So this is a 3-mark question. We would get the first mark for correctly changing the numbers into whole numbers. We would get a second mark for getting the correct answers, and the third mark for putting the decimal in the correct place between the 56 and the 4. Number 21. Work out 7 and 3/8, take away 2 and a half. Give your answer as a mixed number. So in order to do this, we would first have to change these into improper fractions. So we will multiply 7 by 8. If we add the 3, that gives us 59. So our improper fraction is going to be 59 over 8. We're taking away 2 and a half, so 2 times 2 gives us 4. And if we add the 1, that gives us 5. We then need to make sure that both the fractions are over the same denominator. So we're going to use the LCM of 8 and 2, which is 8. And the first fraction is already over 8, so we can keep that the same. But in order to make the second denominator into 8, we would have to multiply that by 4. So we are going to do the same thing to the numerator. 5 times 4 gives us 20. And now we can simply take away the numerators. 59 take away 20 is 39. Our denominator would remain 8. So, because the question says to give the answer as a mixed fraction, we just have to work out 39 divided by 8, and this would give us 4 with a remainder of 7. So as a mixed number, our answer is going to be 4 and 7/8. This was a 3-mark question, so first we would get our first mark for writing these correctly as improper fractions. We would get a second mark for correctly writing them with the same lowest common denominator, and our final mark for a correct answer of 4 and 7/8. Number 22. A cube has a total surface area of 150 centimeters squared. Work out the volume of the cube. So the only information that we've been given about the cube is that the total surface area is 150 centimeters squared. In order to find the volume, we need to know what lengths the cube is. And we know that in a cube, all the side lengths are equal to each other. And because we do not know what the side lengths are, we could just call them x for now. In order to find the area of just one of the surfaces, we would have to do the length multiplied by the width, which would just be x multiplied by x, and that gives us x squared. Because the lengths are all equal in a cube, the areas of each surface would also be equal. Therefore, the total surface area would be 6 times x squared because we've got 6 faces in the cube. We now have an expression for the total surface area, and what we can do is make an equation using the information given. The total surface area is 150, so we can substitute that, and that should be equal to 6x squared. So in order to solve this for x, we would first divide both sides by 6. 150 divided by 6 is 25, so 25 is equal to x squared, which means that x would be equal to the root of 25. Therefore, x is equal to 5 centimeters. So in order to find the volume, we would just multiply the length times the width times the height, which would just be 5 times 5 times 5, which is the same as 5 cubed, and that gives us 125 centimeters cubed. This was a 4-mark question, and we would be given 1 mark for knowing how to form an expression for the total surface area, another mark for finding the correct value for the length, a 3rd mark for knowing how to find the volume of the cube, and the final mark for getting the correct answer for the volume. Number 23. The table shows information about the daily rainfall in a town for 60 days. Draw a frequency polygon for this information. So whenever we're trying to draw a frequency polygon for any grouped data, we always have to make sure that we use the midpoints of each of the classes. To find the midpoint, we will just add the two numbers, for example, 0, which is the lower class, and 5, which is the upper class, and then divide it by 2. So the midpoint for the first one will be 2.5, the second one will be 7.5, the midpoint of 10 and 15 is 12.5, the midpoint of 15 and 20 is 17.5, and the midpoint of 20 and 25 is 22.5. We can now plot these points on our graph, and because on our y-axis, 10 small boxes represent 10 units, this means that each small box represents 1 unit. For the x-axis, 2.5 would be right in the middle of 0 and 5, so we could plot 2.5 with 8. We will plot 7.5 with 24. We'll plot 12.5 with 13. We will plot 17.5 with 11, and we will plot 22.5 with 4. The final step would just be to join all the points with a straight line so that we have different line segments, and that is our frequency polygon completed. This was a 2-mark question, and in order to get the 2 marks, the first mark would be for knowing that we have to plot the midpoints, and the second mark would be for plotting all the points correctly and joining them up with a ruler. Number 24. The universal set consists of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Set A consists of odd numbers and set B consists of square numbers. Part A. Complete the Venn diagram for this information. So 1 is an odd number as well as a square number, so we can put it in the middle. 2 is neither odd nor square, so we will put it outside of set A and B. 3 is an odd number, so we put it just in set A. 4 is not odd, however it is a square number, so we put it just in set B. 5 is an odd number, so we put it just in set A. 6 is again neither odd nor square, so we put it outside of A and B. 7 is an odd number, so we put it just in set A. 8 is again neither odd nor square, so we put it outside of set A and B. 9 is odd as well as a square number, so we put it in the middle. And 10 is again neither odd nor square, so we put it outside of set A and set B. Part B says, a number is chosen at random from the universal set. Find the probability that this number is in the set B apostrophe, which means not in set B. So this is set B, and if we're looking at all the numbers which are not in set B, that means we're looking at this whole region outside of set B. So if we count the numbers that are in this region, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 numbers. So because we're writing this as a probability, we're going to put 7 as our numerator, and there are 10 numbers in total, so we will put 10 as our denominator. So for part A, we would get 3 marks for putting in all our numbers in the correct places in the Venn diagram. And for part B, we would get 1 mark for correctly writing our probability and the correct numbers in the numerator and denominator. Number 25. This scatter graph shows information about the ages and weights of some babies. Part A, describe the relationship between the ages and weight of the babies. So for part A, we can say that there is a positive correlation, which means that as the baby's age increases, the weights also increase. The next part says, another baby has a weight of 5.8 kg. So for part B, it says using the scatter graph, find an estimate for the age of this baby. So whenever we're using our scatter graph to find any estimate, we first have to draw a line of best fit. So we could draw our line of best fit there. And because we're looking at where the weight is 5.8, that means we're looking at the y-axis and finding 5.8 there. So we can see that if 10 boxes are representing 2 units, that means one box will represent 0.2 units. And we know that 5 would be somewhere in the middle of 4 and 6, so that's where 5 would be. And if we count in 0.2s, 5.8 would be there. So we can just take our ruler and draw a line at 5.8 until it meets the line of best fit. We then want to see what value that corresponds to on the x-axis to see what age that corresponds to. So if we read the scale, this is also going in 0.2 units. So for part B, we can say that the estimate of the age is 3.6 months. So in this question for part A, we would get 1 mark for stating the correct relationship, and in part B, we would get the first mark for drawing the correct line of best fit, and the second mark for giving a correct estimate of the age. Number 26. The price of a holiday increases by 20%. This 20% increase adds £240 to the price of the holiday. Work out the price of the holiday before the increase. So we know that whenever we are looking at an original amount of anything, that always represents 100%. For this question, we are adding 20%, which makes our new percentage 120%. We've been told that the 20% increase adds £240, which means the 20% represents £240. So in order to work backwards and look at what the 100% would be, we can check what we have done to 20 to make it into 100, and we can see that we have multiplied that by 5. This means that if we want to find the original amount, we would also have to multiply that by 5. So if we try to work that out, 240 multiplied by 5, we can first do 24 times 5. 4 times 5 is 20, and 5 times 2 is 10, plus the 2 is 12, which means 240 times 5 will be 1,200. So our final answer for this question is £1,200. We would get 1 mark for being able to recognize that we have to multiply by 5, and the second mark for getting a correct final answer of £1,200. Number 27. The diagram shows a solid cylinder on a horizontal floor. The cylinder has a volume of 1,200 centimeter cubed, height of 40 centimeters. The cylinder exerts a force of 90 newtons on the floor. Work out the pressure on the floor due to the cylinder. So here we've been asked to work out the pressure, and we have been given the formula for the pressure, which is force over area. We've also been given the force in the question, which is 90 newtons. So we've got the force, however, we do not have the area. We do know that the area which is exerting the pressure on the floor is a circle, and we know that the area of a circle is given by pi r squared. The only other information that we've been given is the volume and the height. We also know that the volume of a cylinder is given by the formula pi r squared times h. So if we substitute what we know in that formula, we know that the volume is 1,200, and this will be equal to pi r squared times the height, which is 40. If we divide both sides by 40, we can simplify this to 120 divided by 4, which is 30, which means that 30 is equal to pi r squared. We already know that the formula of the area of a circle is given by pi r squared, and we have 30 is equal to pi r squared. We can therefore conclude that the area is equal to 30 centimeters squared. We now know what the area is, and we can use this to now find the pressure that we're looking for. Pressure is equal to force over area. The force is 90, and the area from our previous formula is given to us as 30. We can simplify this to make it 9 over 3, and 9 over 3 is equal to 3 Newton per meter squared. So here we would get 1 mark for identifying that 30 is the area of the circle. We will get another mark for putting the values correctly into the formula, and the final mark for getting a correct answer of 3 Newton per meter squared. Question 28. Use these graphs to solve the simultaneous equations 2 minus 2y is equal to x and 2y is equal to 3x minus 22. Whenever we are solving simultaneous equations graphically, we just need to look at where both the line graphs intersect. So the first line graph has been given to us, and the second line graph has also been given to us. This is the point of intersection, and if we read the x-axis, the x-coordinate there would be 6. The y-coordinate here would be minus 2. So we can just write this as our answer, where x is equal to 6 and y is equal to minus 2. So this was a 1 mark question, and we would get the full 1 mark for giving both the correct coordinates for x and y. Number 29. Work out the value of 4 to the power minus 6 times 4 to the power 9 over 4. When we are multiplying indices, we have to add the powers. So for the numbers in the numerator, we will be adding the powers, which are minus 6 plus 9, and minus 6 plus 9 gives us 3. So for this numerator, we have 4 to the power 3, and in the denominator, we have just 4, and the 4 has a power 1. When we divide numbers with indices, we need to take the powers away. So we are going to do 3 take away 1, which gives us 2. So our answer is 4 squared. And because the question is asking us to work out the value of it, 4 squared is equal to 4 times 4, which is 16. So our final answer is going to be 16. This was a 2-mark question, and the first mark would be given for correctly working out the indices using the laws of indices, and the second mark would be given for getting a correct final answer of 16. Number 30, write down the exact value of cos 60 degrees. So for this, we can use our exact trigonometric values. And the value of cos 60 is 1 over 2, or a half. And this is a 1-mark question. Number 31. The probability tree diagram shows the probabilities that Shayla will work at home or will work at the office on 2 days next week. Work out the probability that Shayla will work at home on Monday and work at the office on Friday. So in order to find this probability, we would first have to look at the branch which represents working from home on Monday, which is that branch, and then working from the office on Friday, which is that branch. In order to find these probabilities, we would multiply the probabilities. So we would do 0.2 multiplied by 0.3, and 2 multiplied by 3 is 6. Because we are multiplying decimals here, which have a total of 2 decimal places, that means for our answer 6, we're just going to move the decimal place back 2 times, so once and twice. So the decimal goes there, and our answer is therefore 0.06. So this was a 2-mark question, and we would get 1 mark for correctly identifying the probabilities that need to be multiplied, and a 2nd mark for getting a correct final answer of 0.06.